I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender. Capella University is rethinking higher education. With its game-changing FlexPath learning format, you can earn your degree on your schedule and fit your education seamlessly into your life. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network.
So I have Judy Blume on the podcast. Judy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Judy, I have to tell you, I've done hundreds of podcasts and interviews and everything, and this is the first time I am totally tongue-tied because it's not like you're somebody I know about since I've been an adult or in the past 5 years or the past year. Like, I feel like and I'm sure you get this all the time, I feel like I've known you since I've been 11 years old.
Well, good. I'm glad.
I'm sure people say that to you all the time. And
it could have been since you were 7.
It might have been since I was 7. I'll tell you, I read Forever at 11, so maybe that was really...
okay. I would not want you reading Forever at 7.
But Forever I did read at 11. Heck, I read Wifey at 11. So, anyway, I have a whole bunch of questions. So,
okay.
I'm really thankful you came on the podcast. And in part, this is because, I do want to say we're going to talk about your recent book, In the Unlikely Event, which was incredible and really just as incredible as all of your, all of the books you wrote when I was a kid. This is also an incredible book. But I want to start off with kind of like, two important origin type stories. And one is, I feel like everybody, and you must feel that everybody my generation, even the current generation, every young person reads your books not only for entertainment, but because they're trying to find out something about themselves. And you were like the only friend in some way who would tell us. And yet our reading patterns change as we become adults. Like, we read for entertainment, we read for lots of other reasons. We don't necessarily read to find out more about ourselves. That's not our first agenda. But with your books, they were. And why do you think reading habits change from childhood to adulthood?
I'm not sure that they do. I'm not sure that what you just said is true for everybody. I think people who read fiction, we read fiction to be taken out of our own lives, to get insight into other people's lives as well as our own lives. So, and certainly to be entertained and to learn new things. So I don't necessarily agree with what you said.
That's interesting because, for instance, let's just take, not only sex, but all of the things about puberty and growing up and even bullying and feeling inferior, I felt like I learned from your books on how to deal with those issues. And if, again, I agree with you. We always learn things in books, but I don't go to books now to solve a deep personal problem in the way that your books solved those problems for me when I was younger.
That's because you have other places to go. I mean, you have people to talk to. You have other ways to gain that insight. That's not why I wrote my books. And I would argue with you that I wouldn't argue with you because every reader is entitled to get whatever he or she gets out of a book, and everybody has different needs at different ages. That's true. But I would tell you as a writer, I was writing about the characters. I wasn't writing to give young readers a place to go to find out answers to their questions. Although I surely would have gone to those books myself. I mean, especially Margaret and Deanie, maybe then again, maybe I won't. I mean, I was desperate for information.
Well, that's interesting because you're right. I think kids read them because they like them, rather than saying, "Oh, I need to find out what puberty is, so I'm going to pull this book off the bookshelf." But
right.
So you and you still do this, and we'll get to this when we talk about In an Unlikely Event. You basically were connecting with this honesty and truth that was about yourself and what you were going through as a kid, and you perhaps didn't know who to go to, and so you wrote your truths in those books.
Not necessarily.
Okay, keep disagreeing with me.
Arguing with you about this, I don't mean to, but
that's okay.
I mean, I was writing out of a deep personal need to have a place for my creative energy to go when I couldn't find any other place for it, because I had it all the time that I was in school, outlets for it. I was always a creative kid. I had, my own fantasies and secrets and imagination, and then I grew up more or less. I wouldn't say that I was exactly grown up when I started to write, but I was in a grown-up situation. I, was married and I had 2 little babies, but I wouldn't say that I had made it into the world of grown-ups exactly. But I needed that outlet for my creative self and my imagination. And so what I was doing was, I was a storyteller always, even when I was a little kid. I didn't know it. I mean, I didn't tell anybody my stories, but I certainly always made up the stories inside my head. They were there. And I didn't exactly know what to do with them, but I surely enjoyed them very, very much. I just never told anybody they were there.
You brought up something in a couple of different interviews that you've done, which is that, you kind of, as you said, you were like sort of a storyteller as a child. You were creative in your head all through your childhood, and then you kind of got on this normal track where, married, 2 kids, and you felt like your fate was sealed at 25, and then you said writing saved your life. And what do you mean by that?
It did save my life. I think it made my life, and it saved my life. Until I started to write, I was sick all the time. I had 2 babies. I had a lot of responsibility, and I loved taking care of them. I still love babies. But I was always sick. I just had one exotic illness after another. And once I started writing, it was like I was letting all that bad stuff out. I was letting it out. It had a place to go. It didn't have to make me sick anymore. And then I
how do you think
didn't
that works?
Get sick anymore.
How do you think that works, like biologically? Like why do you think you didn't get sick anymore?
Because I had a place. I don't know. I need to be on your sofa here. You need to be sitting there, doctor.
I feel like now I'm asking you a question you haven't been asked before because you paused.
Well, yeah, I can pause, right? I always pause to think about it. It's like every time it's the first time.
Yes.
I think that I just, found the satisfaction. Again, I just think it had a place to go. It had a place to go where I could let all this stuff out because I never could admit to being unhappy or unfulfilled. I grew up in the 50s, and everything was changing. I had these little kids in this suburban marriage. It was the early 60s, and everything was changing everywhere around me. I wanted to be part of it all. I wanted to be out there and part of it. And I think writing allowed me to be less frustrated and under less stress, and it just made me happy to wake up every morning.
A lot of people listening to this, so people listen, let's say, on their commute to work or in the gym or maybe in their cubicle at their job. A lot of people feel stuck in their lives, maybe in a similar way to how you felt stuck when you were younger. What can they do to change their fate the way you changed yours?
Well, I didn't know I was changing my fate. I mean, that's the thing. You never know this. It's not like, well, I'm going to change my fate. I'm going to start writing. I mean, I didn't know anything. And these things happen by themselves. But I think if you do feel stuck, no matter how you feel stuck, you have to figure that out yourself. I can't tell you how to do it. I just think you have to go for it. You have to make an effort.
One thing you mentioned was that how, as a child, you had all this creative energy and you were a storyteller then. So at the age of 25 or whenever you first started writing your first book, you kind of touched back into what you loved as a child, and perhaps that's a technique.
Yes, there was a lot going on in my life. I felt lonely. I missed the friendships that I had all the time I was in school. Again, things were very different. I tried to fit in my neighborhood, in my little cul-de-sac, and I'm a friendly person, and so I used to long for those friendships. And I didn't find the same kinds of friendships I had when I was in school, and I miss that very much. And I understand now how important friendship is in a life, no matter how happy you are with your family. And for 36 years, I've been in an incredibly happy relationship. And
I'm going to get to that too in a little bit, but we'll hold off on that.
And my kids are grown up, but friendship is really, really an important part of life. I think for everyone at every age throughout your life.
So there's this idea, or I'm going to say I have this idea, that art kind of takes people to a dark place and then brings us back somehow changed. And I feel like in your last book, and in all your books, but in your last book I want to talk about particular, in an unlikely event, you certainly do that, because the dark place is the fact that we're all afraid of uncertainty and the uncertainty that could happen in our lives, and the fear of it and how we deal with that. Would you say that's kind of this overriding theme of the book?
You're interesting because you're bringing up a lot of good stuff. I wish we had more time to talk about it. Is that the theme of the book? Well, again, I'm a person who never knows what the theme of her book is until I read it somewhere or somebody says it to me. It's like, oh, wait a minute, is that what I was doing? To me, I was telling a story about, basically three families and I'm really bad at talking about my books, and a time and a place and events that happen that that changed their lives in many, many important ways. And it is very dark. Yeah, it does take them into a very dark place. And of course, the dark stuff is inspired by the truth of what happened in my town when I was growing up, when I was 14 years old. And the most interesting part of that to me is I had this story. I never forgot this story. I had this story that I had put someplace deep, deep inside, but I never forgot about it. And how come, I'm a writer for 40 plus years. I don't even know how many years anymore. And I never thought to tell this story until now. And I can't answer that. I don't know. It hit me like a boing when a writer, now what is her name? Rachel Kushner had just written her first novel, and she came to the Key West Literary Seminar, and she was one of our young new voices in fiction. And she was on stage, and she was talking about being inspired by stories her mother told her about having grown up in the 50s in Cuba. The part of that I heard, the part of that was the zinger, was in the 50s. And by the time I left that auditorium that afternoon, I had all of the characters and the story. I mean, this is never how it works with me. I knew where it was going. I knew everything about it. And it was like, I have to write this story, and I have to write it immediately. I have to tell this story. I have to get it out from inside. And I started doing my research, that was over a weekend on Monday morning. And 5 years later, you might ask me why it took so long, since it all came to me in a moment. It's a lot harder to write it all down than it is to think it in that moment. I had to get to work, and I did.
So
And,
I mean,
yeah.
it's interesting because a lot of your young adult books from earlier, you've mentioned you would write them so quickly, and and how long this took. It's definitely different than how your older approach.
Well, I mean, it's 400 pages and 400 and something pages, and it required a lot of research, and instead of being told by a single narrator, it's told by
Right.
40 different people. It's not really 40, but they all do come together. I like books like that. I'm reading a book like that now that I am absolutely loving. My husband and we were listening to it. We had 8 hours in a car, and we listened to it for 8 hours. And
What's the book?
And it goes on for 900 pages, and so we have to carve out the time every day. It's called City on Fire.
City on Fire.
And
okay, I'm going to read that. So speaking of
book.
your husband, I wanted to ask you, and this is like really just a personal question. I read that you and your husband lived together ever since your second date, and now you've been together 36 years. Like,
go ahead, finish the question. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, so now you've been together 36 years, and so people would say that's like, a very, everybody now is like, you have to do, you have to like really see if you like the person. How did you know right away that this is it?
Oh, we didn't. We were crazy. It was the end of the 70s. It was in New Mexico. Things were different. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, we went out on a blind date on Sunday night, fixed up, by the way, introduced, really, by his ex-wife, which was very nice of
That's
her.
odd of her.
Actually, she gave him 4 names. He came out to visit, and she gave him 4 names, and he asked his 12-year-old daughter, Amanda, which of these 4 women do you think I should, go out to dinner with? And she was like, Dad, she was 12 years old. She was reading all my books. Dad, go out with Judy Blume. And so we went out to dinner on a Sunday night. We had a nice time. We went to see Apocalypse Now at the movies on Monday night.
Great first date movie.
Yeah, fell asleep on his shoulder. And on Tuesday night, I was seeing someone else, and then he called after, and we had what we called then a late date. And, again, it was such a different time. I mean, it was so completely different. And, yes, he stayed over, and he never left. And we will be celebrating 36 years together in a couple of weeks. So,
that's great.
And you know what? I mean, we did take a chance, and it was crazy. And I would never recommend to my kids or to anyone else that you do this. But we kind of made a bargain that we were going to try this. We liked each other, and we were going to. He was a law professor, and so he was always writing up some contract that we were going to sign. For 6 months, we were going to sign a contract that we were going to spend 6 months together. And he was always working on this. He was working on this, and 6 months passed, and a year, and 6 years, and he never did get together this contract. But
what do you think makes it work for 36 years?
What makes it work?
Yeah,
well,
I'm asking.
Well,
totally
getting through the first years was harder because we didn't know each other, and we had to get to know each other and understand always that we respected each other and liked each other enough to get through that. I mean, that's the hard part. Now, now it's so deep and it's so important to our lives, our well-being, everything. I think the older we get, and the longer we've been together, the better it gets, and the more we appreciate each other.
That's nice.
So when you get to be 77, you start losing friends, and you understand how important this is and how wonderful it is and how lucky you are to have it.
And it sounds like it's because you're really good friends with him.
We are very good friends. We are totally different personalities, and maybe that is good. He's really easygoing, and nothing phases him. And I would say that I am not that way, but it rubs off on me, and I think some of my, high energy craziness rubs off on him, and we just really have a good time together.
And I have one more question. I know your time is limited.
It's okay. This is fun.
Well, good. Well, I have 2 young daughters, and who would you say, I mean, other than you, because they also read you, but who are the new generation of Judy Blumes today? Like, who do you like? Who do you like as a young adult author, and who are your influences?
Well, I don't like, who is the new Judy Blume, because I'm still here.
No, I know.
I'm here, and my books
and
are
they're
here.
still reading you.
And I've got a lot of young writer friends, and I try to be, supportive of them, and I love them. And I couldn't start to name names, because if I left one out, she or he would feel badly. But I love to encourage new writers for young people, because they'll bring different experiences and different time frames and all kinds of new things to the books. And so there are a lot of them. I never wrote YA, let's just get that straight, because there was no YA when I was writing those early books that you were talking about. Even when I wrote Forever, there was no such thing as YA. And so nobody knew what to do with it. Today, that would be published YA. But my other books, like Margaret and Deanie and the others, they're not really YA books. They're really more on the cusp books. I think kids are reading them younger, like 10. How old are your daughters?
13 and 16. So they've kind of have been.
Oh, well,
they've done your books, and now they're doing some John Green. They're doing Traveling Sisterhood or whatever.
Well, I mean, I love John Green. He's wonderful, and there are a lot of other wonderful younger writers. But your 16-year-old is surely ready to read adult books. I mean, I would think I would give her Summer Sisters.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I will.
Yeah.
So I bet you a lot of people come up to you, just like I came up to you in the beginning of this podcast, and say, when I was 12, I felt like you were the only person that really understood me. Like somehow some things you were writing were resonating deep inside me. Do you have stories? Like, has anybody come up to you and anything that stood out where you've been really touched by what these people have said about your writing?
All the time. And what I tell them, I've been going around. I've been on a book tour since the 1st of June, and I'm going to my 32nd and final city, the grand finale this weekend, and it is Atlanta, and I can't wait to go, and then I can't wait to be done, and I'm never doing it again. It's been wonderful, but really hard, and in each city, we've been in a big venue, maybe 700 to 1,000 people. And I understand what it is. I represent childhood. I represent maybe yours, maybe the childhoods of so many of my readers and fans, and even, those who have grown up with me and continue to read my books. I think when somebody represents your childhood, that's special. And I am so lucky that so many people tell me that.
Well, it's funny, with the book tour and how you're never going to do it again. And I assume you're going to continue writing more and more books. Now on the internet, we're on this podcast, over 100,000 people are going to listen to this podcast. You should do the podcast tour next time. Then you could sit at home.
Yeah, I would. I think I would. I definitely. I'm done with that kind of, traveling around like that. I'm just so lucky that it went well, and in every city, and really lucky that I didn't get sick, because I have terrible sinuses, and when I fly, I usually get sick. But I have some good doctors who gave me some wonderful tricks and meds and kept me healthy for the whole thing. I can't believe that. I'm afraid to say it. It's like my mother would say, poo, 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 don't say it, knock on wood, and all of that, because I still have to fly one more time, Saturday and Sunday, and then I won't be doing it again for a while. So
what's the next book?
Oh, please, I'm taking time off. You know what I feel? I feel like I just was sitting in this room in Key West, where I'm lucky enough to work facing a garden with the doors open. I just finished this book, really and truly. I didn't finish until maybe last February, I don't know, and then I sat in here and signed 20,000 what they call tip-in sheets, and now I have an in-pin shoulder from all that signing. And I went on the tour, and I'm still touring, and now they're talking about the paperback coming out in May, and I'm like, whoa, hold on here. I'm still getting to the hardcover tour. Let's not rush me. And so I'm not really going to be writing another book this winter.
Well, Judy Blume, I have to say thank you, because you've changed so much and influenced so much of my life, and even this podcast. Some of the ideas and things you brought up are are very inspiring, and I really appreciate you coming on my podcast. Your latest book is In an Unlikely Event. I highly recommend it. Has just as much effect as any young adult book I read by you, and I'm just so grateful you came on.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope your readers will read In the Unlikely Event. It's a very special book for me, and it means a lot to me. So thank you so much for talking to me. This was fun.
Yeah, and your next book, which I know you're eventually going to write, I'm going to encourage you to do the podcast tour instead and start with me.
That sounds great. Okay, I'll remember that.
Thanks, Judy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.
For more from James, check out The James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
I created this idea called Generation W. It's all about educating, inspiring, connecting women. And it's about building community at the same time. It's not like women are on some outpost somewhere, right? Just like no ethnic people are on some outpost there, people of color, right? We're all together. So if we learn how to appreciate each other, we elevate one, we elevate us all. And so for the first year, that's where we started. And we had 700 people show up. They had no idea what they were showing up to, but they loved it. And they said, we want more.